We're all Montanans, and we have to show up for each other. Let's show up and let's be open-minded to find the similarities. Because at the end of the day, like, Montana's potential, it's unstoppable.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
Welcome to The Vault, a Montana-based business podcast where we highlight the people and ideas driving our region forward. I'm your host, Marcel Bruschi.
You're listening to The Vault.
Joining us today on The Vault, I'm really excited for this guest. We've just spent some time together this week. I've gotten to know her this fall. But we have Nikki Geiszler with the Montana World Affairs Council. She's based out of Missoula, but does work all across the entire state of Montana, and she's going to talk about that. But joining us here in Billings in our studio here in The Vault. So Nikki, welcome to The Vault.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and be in Billings and exploring Eastern Montana this week. It's been an amazing time.
You guys have been on the road. I got to join, and we're going to talk about that. But before we do, let's just get to know Nikki. Where did Nikki grow up? You have such a fun history of your family, your upbringing, the ranch, all of the things. So let's just dive in. Where'd you grow up?
I'm originally from Florida. I grew up in Stuart, Florida, and I graduated from University of Florida. My background's actually in archaeology.
Which is so wow. Impressive that I know an archaeologist. I'm just going to say you're the first one.
That's actually how I ended up in Montana, was for my master's degree in archaeology. So everybody can call up Dr. Kelly Dixon from the University of Montana and thank her for bringing me out here.
And she's still there. Yeah.
She's still
we
there.
Love it.
It's all because of her. I had to do an interview process for your master's, and I interviewed all over the entire country, actually. And I was like, I really just want to go on an adventure. I'd always intended to go for my PhD. It was not my intent to move somewhere and stay there. And Montana kind of came up because I was looking at a map and I was like, wow, where would be a really cool adventure? And I was like, I wonder if there's a professor in Montana. That sounds fun. And when I called her, she had just discovered this underground thing in downtown Missoula, and her energy was like, oh my God, I have to go there. And then after 2 hours of discussing, what do you do if a mountain lion's going to eat you, or what's going to happen if a bear starts chasing you through a forest? I was like, yeah, that's my state. That's where I'm moving.
That's where we will thrive.
Yeah, I was like, that's
for Nikki.
Go.
And if you know Nikki, I'm like, what do you mean a bear? I worry about the bear. I don't worry about Nikki in that setting.
This seems like home. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then I got my acceptance letter. The next day was spring break, and I called my dad up, who was living in Tampa at the time. And he was like, great, I just booked us plane tickets. We're going to leave tomorrow. So
I love the spontaneity.
Oh, yeah. My dad was
Dad.
like, let's do this. And we immediately show up in Missoula, Montana. A blizzard hits. We have the best time.
From Florida.
Oh,
so you're
Florida.
Like, here's the snow.
Yes.
At its worst moment of winter.
And I was like, this feels great. Snow, amazing. Different concept than, the beaches where I grew up. And we went up to Glacier National Park. Immediately coming back down to Missoula, we hit a deer, totaled the rental car. My dad gets out and goes, we have to move here. We've already gone hunting. Proceeds to be like, you drive, I have to call everyone. So my father, who has now moved to Montana too.
Is he your same energy?
Oh, yes.
You guys are okay, cut from the same cloth.
And so he's calling everyone, and he's like, I've already killed an animal in Montana. I've gone hunting. We're all moving here.
Which is not how we hunt, for those listening. We're not. But accidental hunting is what we can call that.
Yeah, it was an accidental hunting experience. And, for normal people, maybe this wasn't Montana, we should move there.
Yeah, but we hit a deer in the rental car. You guys are like, this is a sign, where other people would be like, this is a sign to not stay.
I was like, no, this is home. Let's go. And so I got back to Florida. I had gotten all of these other scholarship acceptance letters, and my dad cried on the phone and was like, no, we need to move to Montana.
Not you. It's like we.
Yeah, we. It was a we.
It was a we. Yeah.
And it ended up being that I did choose Montana and I came here. And I feel like you hear this story a lot where you move to Montana and then you meet a boy and then you never leave. And so the story kind of goes, I was doing my interview at University of Montana. And during that time, I was like, Dad, you need to start looking at apartments.
Yep.
You know,
we need a living quarter.
Yeah, we have to live somewhere. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to go explore all of these different places. He looked at one and was like, oh, I heard there's a lot of breweries around here. I'm going to go tell my daughter that I looked at all these different apartments while I go taste all of Montana's beer, which might also have been a reason why he was like, we have to move here.
We're moving to Montana.
And he only looked at this one apartment, which happened to be apartment 109 in the Silvertip Apartments. And
in Missoula.
Yep.
So all our Missoula people know what this is. They know the Silvertip. I do not, but
hopefully, you know, look it up or don't. It's fine. But my husband, when I moved there, or soon to be husband, didn't know him at the time, obviously, but moved in. And then this boy in 309 had a dog and I had a dog. And
what was your dog's name?
My dog is Kingsley. Who is named after an archaeological dig site, Kingsley Plantation.
Wow. Sweet angel Kingsley.
Yeah. He was born in Polson, Montana.
Wow.
So I had bought this dog while working as a TA, volunteer TA on this dig site, like on the border of Georgia and Florida. And so all of the students I was working with at the time, I was like, are we team cow or are we team hippo? Based off of these two puppies that they had decided one looked more like a cow, one looked more like a hippo. And I actually can't remember which one.
What, were we the cow or the hippo?
I think he was the cow. I think he was the cow.
Montana.
And then I just drove up to Polson and bought a puppy, because I guess that's what you do when you move to Montana. You buy a dog. And so I was like, well, I don't really know anyone. My parents had not followed me at this time. And neither did my grandma or my best friend. I've brought a lot of people to Montana. Maybe I should apologize.
It's fine.
And we ended up walking my dog, and this really cute boy had come up to me and was like, what's your dog's name? And then instantly forgot what the cute boy's name was and was like, what's your dog's name? Only remembered Riley.
The dog.
Only remembered the dog. And ended up being like, maybe I should get a job, during this time. And I ended up getting a job at Pier 1 because, someone else had left. Turns out was my future husband that had been working at Pier 1. Ended up taking his job. And my boss at the time was his best friend. So cute boy walks in. I'm like, God, I think he's my neighbor.
But God, what is his name?
Yeah,
I know the Riley dog. Sweet little Riley.
Yeah, only know Riley. And I go up to my boss at the time and I'm like, Damien, does that guy live in Silvertip Apartments and have a dog named Riley? And he's like, that's really creepy, Nikki.
And you're like, well, I live there.
I was like, I think he's my neighbor. And he's like, oh, his name is Sam. And, maybe this isn't the best relationship advice I should give every woman out there, but maybe it is. Like, maybe everyone should pull this trick. I got to my apartment, parked my car, and saw him across, the entire apartment complex. Got out of the car and just screamed, Sam!
And Nikki's loud.
Yeah.
By that, your voice carries. You have no issue projecting.
And the Silvertip Apartments is in a valley. Like,
everyone heard
it echoed.
Sam.
Like, the entire apartment complex probably turned their heads and was like, whoa.
What is happening?
And Sam obviously was like, I'm going to marry her.
In that moment, right. He knew.
And our daughter is 4 years old now, and I just dropped her off at preschool the other day, and she saw one of her guy friends from school, and she screamed his name across the parking lot, and I was like, oh, she's taking after her mother. Yeah, we should all worry.
We yelled it across the parking lot, and we're married.
Yeah, I was like,
in the moment he knew. He's like, she is it.
Yeah, he was like, I think I'm going to just marry her.
Yeah.
So ended up been together now for 12 years. Wow. I've lived here that long. Maybe it's even longer. I can't even remember. But it's been an amazing time. And I've actually just, this job has allowed me to explore a lot more of Montana. And the more and more I explore, the more and more I fall in love with this entire state.
Well, and I want to get into that because you've been to like literally every corner of the state where I'm like, even growing up here, I haven't been to some of the places you've been, but you went into archaeology originally. Like what drew you to that?
Okay.
As like a field, right? Because that's what brought you to Montana was like this program working as a TA for free. Wow. Bless you. Yeah.
So I knew in third grade
Why did you know in third grade?
I was reading a history book and there was this paragraph and it was all about this archaeologist discovering all this new stuff. And I thought that was really cool. And both my grandparents, my mom's parents would pick me up from school. And I remember getting in the car and I called them Mama and Papa. And I was like, Mama, Papa, I think I'm going to be an archaeologist. I think this is it for me. Like that. I think this is the path I'm going to go in. And I remember my grandfather, Papa at the time, he was like, you should do it. Let's go. Like, let's do this thing. If this is what you want to do, you should pursue this path. And I think you'll be excellent at it, whatever you want to do. And I stuck. And so I kept with this whole anthropology, archaeology, studying other cultures. And what I actually specialized in was historical archaeology, looking at children in childhood. I actually studied under a mortuary archaeologist in undergrad, Dr. Davidson. Hi, Davidson.
We'll have to send this to Dr. Davidson.
Yeah, be like, this is all your fault too. And it just stuck with me. So I studied mortuary archaeology.
Which is like, wow, what is that? Like that seems very
dead
niche.
People,
yeah,
obviously.
but but it seems very niche.
Mm-hmm. More surprising, you would see, I feel like more people are like, if you like archaeology, maybe want to study a couple dead bodies in your lifetime. I mean, it's not, when you're in that field, you're like, oh, dead people, dead artifacts. Like this is their whole life anyways. And so I like studied about 1,000 different burial sites across the entire United States.
Through your undergrad?
Through my undergrad. Got really into race and racism in children and childhood and how you can see those in burials. So that was my undergrad honors thesis.
Which what are like? Tell us a little bit because I've never had anyone like you.
It's
like
been a
what
few
is that
years that I've studied.
Yeah, but like what are you seeing that's like that you're finding? And
so in African American burial sites, you would find a lot more like dolls and toys, where you would not see that in white burials. So this was what I studied. And then I made a thesis, which I now would need to reread my 300-page thesis of what my master's was longer. But this was this whole thing and that's what I studied. And then when I came to Montana, I changed from mortuary to mining communities. So I studied a lot about Butte and then I compared it with Sandpoint and a town in South Dakota.
Which town in South Dakota?
I don't even remember. Okay. I don't even remember. It's been
Lead or like the Black Hills area. Maybe?
I don't know. It was someplace. And it's funny because in archaeology, nobody wants to study children in childhood. It's like, oh, that's too hard. And I was like, that's obviously what I'm going to be studying. And then anyone
just as a field, it's like, that's not what people... Okay.
Yeah, specialization, they would just be like, oh, we found these toys, we're going to put them over here. And I did a lot of research. I looked a lot actually internationally what other archaeologists had discovered. And I decided everyone in the entire world was categorizing these artifacts incorrectly.
Okay.
And decided,
which, of course they were.
Yeah. And so I ended up being like, my thesis was, this is the way they should be looked at. This is the way I would have categorized them. And I would encourage other future archaeologists who are interested in children and childhood studies to categorize them.
And what was it that was different about yours than others?
I, again, would need to reread my,
I know. I'm just like, I know, like,
thesis.
Wow. Okay.
It's been way too long at this point, and I am no longer an expert. No one go into this thinking, wow, Nikki needs to talk about archaeology now. But I ended up going into this. I was really young when I graduated my master's. So my mother, I grew up, hi mom, she had always told me she had gotten her master's degree at 22 with a 4.0. And I was like, yeah, I'm never doing that.
Damn, mom. Wow.
And then I was in my master's degree and I was 22 and I was like, oh, I have a 4.0. Yeah, I'm going to have to defend this thing early, the day before I turn 23, so that I can call my mom up and be like, hey,
I did
Mom,
it too.
Guess what? I'm 22. I have a 4.0 and I now have a master's degree. Suck it.
That's impressive.
So, a little bit of competition there.
Just a little.
Which is a trait I get from my mother. I was like, I got it. And then I ended up in my master's degree, though, getting diagnosed with Kienbock's disease. And that's just in my left wrist. It's not anything that I can die from or anything like that. But it really would not allow me to continue with archaeology.
Yeah, because you're at sites. Yeah. Didn't you do a southern? Yeah, because you've done some really unique sites.
I've done Ireland and then twice I did Kingsley Plantation. And I loved it. Well, I didn't love Ireland as much as I loved Kingsley Plantation, which is where I really figured out I liked historical archaeology more than prehistorical archaeology. But I was in the middle of my master's degree. I just started when I got diagnosed, and the doctor was very kindly was like, you should not really maybe continue with archaeology. You could teach, but you can't go any further with this. So I kind of went through these years of where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, because I've put all of this energy since third grade into archaeology and studying different cultures and race and racism and children and childhood. And what am I going to do with that? You know, so
because that was like the dream.
And so during my master's, I was working as like an assistant catering and sales manager. And that manager had left, and then they'd offered me her job, and I was like, well, I have nothing else to do right now. So I ended up putting on like 500 people's weddings.
Whoa.
In like 2 years, it felt like, maybe 4. But and after that I was like, oh, I cannot do another wedding. There's only so much you can deal with. Like ants sometimes can be the worst, and it's like, oh no, I cannot deal with this anymore.
It's a lot of
emotions. And it's a
big life moment to be married. It is a big life moment.
So when Sam and I got married, I was like, guest list got to 400 people, and I was like, we're eloping, cancel everything. And we did. So we ended up eloping to Italy, still had 40 people. Which is
amazing.
And so now people are like, that's not what eloping is. You can't bring 40 people with you to still call it eloping, but we're going to just go with it. You did that.
And then you had a party and then a party after, right? Everyone's like, oh, we're celebrating Nikki and Sam.
There was a lot of parties, 3. So actually we got married 3 times.
Yeah.
Just kept it going, which was great because we ended up keep forgetting to do things.
Like a dance,
by
right?
the third time, Sam and I were like, wait, did we ever do our first dance? No? Okay, let's go do our first dance right now. And so it really took 3 weddings to actually get everything good. I'm much now more organized with other people's events and the council's events. I would like that to be known. But when it came to our wedding, it was, forgetting everything that we needed to do. And
we got married. That's the important part.
Yeah, we got married 3 times. It is like secured. Sorry, babe, you are stuck with me for life now.
Times 3.
Oh yeah, times 3. And so we got done, with the 3rd wedding, and everyone's like, so when's the vow renewal? I was like, I think we're good for a few years.
Yeah, give us a couple decades, you know what I mean? And then we'll get to it. Yeah. Wow.
So maybe we'll do something for 10 years. Who knows? But that's how I kind of got into Montana. That was the background. And then getting into the council.
Yeah, Montana WorldQuest Council.
My mother-in-law, hi, Shelly, she was on the board.
In Missoula.
And
at this time, has your family, because you've brought people, like your parents are like, oh my God, your dad is like Montana.
Yeah, no, nobody had moved to Montana.
Okay.
No one's moved yet. So this is like 8 years ago now. And I walked in, and my mother-in-law and a bunch of ladies that were also on the board or the committee, they were trying to be like, how do we bring alcohol into this venue without paying for this alcohol to this venue? And I was like, that's illegal. We cannot. Liquor laws. Let me tell you all about them.
But you're in Montana.
Yeah. And they were like, oh, great. So now you're in charge. If you tell us we can't bring in this alcohol to this venue, you know how to take over this entire event. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I had like quit my job. I was just done. One day I was like,
and which job was this?
That was the catering and sales manager job. And I just couldn't do any more weddings. And these ladies, trying to bring in alcohol, and I'd done all this experience. And so I had actually gone back and started my PhD at this point. And
so education's always been
I've loved school. I've always felt like this is my place. And I was like, at that time when I started my PhD, I was like, I think I'm ready to give up archaeology. So it was like this good closure moment. And I only did 1 semester of it. And I had told my professor that I went back to Dr. Dixon, and I was like, I don't know if I want to continue with it first. And she was like, why don't you just do like some research credits, dive back in, see if you find the passion for it again. And I didn't. And so these ladies trying to bring in alcohol to a venue, I was like, okay, well, I've done events. I've been doing events for 4 years now. I had taken a little bit of a break. I was like, I can do a nonprofit event, like fundraiser. I can solve this problem. And I took it over and they were like, great, you're now hired. And I was like, wait, did I apply for this? And
you did, because you figured out how to get alcohol into the venue.
And so they were like, congratulations, what would you like your title to be? And I was like, I guess programs director. And that's how I became programs director to the Montana World Affairs Council 8 years ago. And ended up, the council was just very focused in Missoula. There was no talk really about expanding statewide. All of our community program was in Missoula. Everyone seemed really kind of content with that at that time. The organization.
But it was called the Montana World Affairs Council.
Yes.
Okay.
And the only program that really outreached across the state was called Academic WorldQuest, which is a national competition. It's all around by all these different local chapters. And I think there's over 90 local chapters now across the entire country. Montana is one of the only few councils that is supposed to cover the entire state. I think there's maybe 5 others that are also statewide councils. And the first year I was on, it's like a learning curve. It's like, okay, let's learn all about this. And Academic WorldQuest was one of these light bulb moments where you're like, wow, this organization could truly make a difference. And for everyone listening, that's like, what the heck is Academic WorldQuest?
Yeah, what is that?
It is, at the time, it was just a global education conference. It's 100-question trivia competition. And to convince a bunch of kids in Eastern Montana that, you should drive 8 hours to Missoula
for this
and participate in a 100-question trivia competition, that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not cool enough. It's not enough to get teachers to want to do that. And so my first year, I sat down in a room full of maybe like 10 teachers at this time. And I was like, hi, my name's Nikki. I'm totally new. I don't know what I'm doing. And they're like, oh, great. And I was like, why don't you tell me what you actually need? And they were all perked up. And all these teachers were like, you want us to tell you what we need? And I was like, yeah, I'm not the expert. You are. And so I just sat there and took probably 15 pages of notes that first year. And at the time, it was like a one-night stay over. They'd already figured out that it needed to have a little bit extra programming and a little welcome dinner the night before, spend the night, and then you do a bunch of programming and everyone leaves by 3. And these teachers were like, it'd be cooler if it was probably more. Like, it needs to be more. And I was like, oh, I can do more. And I just ended up like just studying, like just listening. This was my listen year. Like, let's just listen. And none of these teachers really came from that far. Like, I think actually that's a lie. There was a teacher from Wolf Point there. So they did come, but they did come from far. And they were like, we're going to do scholarships. And at this time, the organization wasn't that financially sound. And we were just kind of building up this momentum. Like, we had this cool concept. We had all these cool things. And we just needed, and it was doing great in Missoula overall, like great in Missoula. Nobody knew what Montana World Fair Council was outside of the state, though. Outside of Missoula, sorry. And I was like, it'd be kind of cool if we moved out of Missoula and did more. And I was on my 3rd executive director at this time, Chris Hislop, who was extraordinary. And
you were the programs director at this time.
Because we're a team of 2.
Okay, and you came in and you're like, I got to learn a little bit about this.
All about this.
Hear it from, which I love that you asked the teachers. I think sometimes, maybe we get in our own way as we bring on new programming or initiatives in any industry, really. And you don't ask the people that are like boots on the ground doing it.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh man, these teachers, they're amazing. I'm going to go meet every teacher in the entire state of Montana. And that kind of came a little bit later. But with Chris, when he became executive director, he was like, Nikki, I think you're onto something. Let's move statewide.
Well, if we're called the Montana World Affairs Council.
Let's be the Montana World Affairs Council. And so we kind of did some like preliminary, like what community probably would welcome us the most to bring like community programming to. And at that time, our current board president had reached out and was like, hi, my name is Kit Hefner, and I'm kind of thinking I want this programming in Bozeman. And so we were like, great, we are moving to Bozeman. And so that was in 2019. We did a couple programs in Bozeman, got great reception, and then COVID hit. And during COVID, like I should back up again to Academic WorldQuest. Academic WorldQuest slowly was building, So we were starting to get new schools, new traction, new communities.
And this was once a year. Was Academic WorldQuest? So at this big trivia on world topics, right? Because trivia and they compete.
And the idea of Academic WorldQuest is a global education conference. And it's now 3 days. Did not start that way. But now it's 3 days and kids learn international dances. We eat international food. We do art projects based off of another culture.
Cool.
We bring in ambassadors and consul generals. And it's 100% free. So these kids, it's no registration fee. We're covering meals for 3 days. We're also fundraising now to cover all of these kids, transportation, lodging, substitute teachers. And we surpassed 500 kids this last year.
Wow, which is amazing.
So from every corner of the entire state, and 20% of those kids come from tribal communities, which is something that's very passionate for me. And then probably 40% of those kids additionally come from remote or rural areas, like what we call rural and remote areas in the state of Montana, not federally rural areas of Montana. So, I mean, like I would consider Bozeman to be an urban area. Billings, obviously, and Missoula are technically the only federal urban. So Montana standards of rural is 40%. And that program is probably like, my husband jokes that when I get the categories, it's like Christmas morning. And I'm like, oh my God, I have next year's categories. And he's like, that's great, babe. And I was like, I have the entire schedule planned.
You're like, I am ready.
And he's like, it's September. The program's in March. But
you got it.
That's great, babe. And it's become this like, it's so connecting to see these kids. And you have kids from like Joliet hanging out with kids from Browning. And you're like, everyone talks about how do you build a bridge between West and East? And it's like, you just bring people together.
Yeah.
And it's 3 days of this connection while they're learning about global topics and current events and all of this exciting things that they might be learning in the classroom. We're also learning about Montana. Like we're building these different communities, are getting to learn about each other. There's friendships that are starting to form. We do a program called the Student-to-Student Global Conversation. And these kids became pen pals, like through like TikTok and like all of these other social media networks. They're like, from I don't even remember all these countries we've done now, but it's, we've connected kids from Montana with kids in Egypt and Japan and Korea. And, we've done Honduras and, we just keep going and Germany. And these kids ask the funniest questions. Like I remember one time we were connected with Germany and a kid came up on the thing and was like, what do you think about when you think about Montana? And they're like, oh, I think you're all fat and you have a lot of guns. And I mean, hilarious.
Okay.
And the kid goes, that's kind of right.
Yeah.
We're all a little overweight and we love our guns. And I was like,
are we Texas? No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. I'm just
like, still Montana,
We're hunters.
Yeah,
right?
we are hunters, and so
accidentally or on purpose.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, no, that seems about right. Because they were like, oh yeah, we're throwing an American party. It's like, oh, what food you bring? And they're like, oh, we brought potato chips and Coca-Cola.
And everyone in the world
States,
loves
right?
that. Yeah.
And they're like, it's really fun. Like, we don't normally eat this. But it's just funny to hear from other, like, the kids love it. And like, this is a conversation where I'm like, adults, you have to leave the room. Like, this is about kids from other countries connecting with our kids. Like, let's sit down and have a conversation. So the idea is like a Montana kid asks a question, a kid in another country answers it.
I love that.
Kid asks a question, and then a Montana kid will then answer that question, a different kid. And then they go back and forth between all these different kids in the classroom in the area gets to ask these questions. And it lasts for about like an hour, and always the kids ask for more time.
Well, I bet that is something they'll remember forever. They'll be like, oh, remember that one kid from Germany said X, or from Poland or wherever.
And I remember when we were on the call with Honduras, and one of the girls was like, hey, with this other girl from Honduras, she's like, do you know this dance? And they're like, oh, do we know this dance? And so they ended up being like, oh, can we film it? So the kids in Honduras and the kids in Montana, they ended up filming the same dance and doing it together. And it's amazing because I frequently say this, but it's so much easier to find each other's differences than to find each other's similarities. And when you just have an open mind, you can truly find similarities from people that you would never think you'd have something in common with. And these kids every year do this. And it's an incredible thing to see. And I'm really lucky to be a part of it.
I have like goosebumps listening to you talk, and I look forward to getting to experience Academic WorldQuest.
Oh, you should come March 1st through the 3rd.
But it's like, so you have that going on, but you've added a lot, so then you were talking about COVID and what was that like for you guys where you're like, we plan this thing for students to like be together. What'd you do in COVID?
During COVID, so we actually still hosted Academic WorldQuest in person at the University of Montana in 2020. And then the next week, COVID became a thing.
Because it was March.
Yeah, it was early March. It's always the first Monday and Tuesday of the year. And then it was like, and we knew about COVID then, but like nothing was shutting down yet. And then the next week, everyone was like, oh, lockdowns. We have to start talking about it. Is Montana going to go into a lockdown? And it was interesting because we tried to do a community program in Bozeman the following week after Academic WorldQuest, and no one showed up. So because it was COVID.
Yeah, and everyone was like,
scarier. But in 2020, we've had this idea we're going to move more statewide. We got to figure out what are we going to move into. And every year we ask the question to teachers still, what do you need? Like, we don't want to do programming that's not going to be helpful to you. And at this time, the governor had just declared economic education was going to be mandatory. And a bunch of the teachers had come forward saying, this actually, if you guys want to go into economics, that'd be amazing, because we really need to start thinking about how we're going to meet these state standards so our kids can graduate. And if you could make it where every single subject, because it doesn't matter then which teacher is going to have to take this over, they could use it. And Allie, who is our education consultant, she and I were like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like, all right, we're going to put some more brain power into this. And we were like, I don't know if it's going to be in Missoula. I don't know where it's going to be. And if maybe it's going to be completely virtual. And when, COVID started when COVID started happening, everything kind of turned virtual. So Allie was like, okay, well, I think we'll start with it just being a virtual platform. And at this time, the next week, Jason Yeager, executive director of the Montana Photonics and Quantum Alliance now, he had called me and we were talking and he was like, Nikki, photonics and quantum, no one knows what this is. And I was like, what is photonics?
You're like, what is it? You describe it really well, though.
And so,
which tells,
photonics is the study of light. So when you think about lasers and chips and like it's in every kid has a cell phone. Every person has a cell phone. You need photonics to build the chips that make these cell phones work. Mm-hmm. If you're in a car and your car can, you see in the dashboard has these sensors, you get out of the line and you're like, I need to get back in.
It like
I
vibrates
use it all the time.
Yeah. My car's not cool enough for that, but I've driven.
That's photonics, and now you get into quantum. Oh, I am not the unofficial spokesperson of quantum. I refuse to take that one on. So you're going to have to call an expert for that one. And he was like, it's going to be a big deal in Montana. And I was like, sure it is, Jason. I was like, well, you know what? That's kind of cool. So this is all in Bozeman? And he was like, yeah. No, Gallatin County. It's going to be big. And, it could go statewide. Like this industry could go statewide, Nikki. Like this is cool. And I was like, okay. Who are you? It was like this big thing. And like at the time, when I first started talking to Jason, it was like, oh, I'm probably going to invade your life. And then I'm like, yeah, maybe Jason invaded my life. And then this whole conversation of we really need to get Montana kids knowledge about what are the career opportunities here in Montana? How can we keep Montana kids here in Montana? We need to start talking about this. These kids don't know what these industries are.
They don't know what they don't know, right?
Yeah, so
I grew up here and I was like, I didn't know what happened. You just don't know.
So, how many kids are thinking, oh man, semiconductors, those are really cool.
That's what I want to go into. No one's thinking that.
No one's thinking that. So
except little third grade you. That's like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm 100% sure I'm going to go into this, which ended up being, I didn't. I had to pivot. And so many times in life, you have to pivot what you're going to do for various reasons. Mm-hmm. And so it's so important, maybe not to teach kids photonics, but to teach them what is photonics, what is this industry that's in my state? And then I also was like, there's all of these different industries that are so reliant and dependent on international trade, international relations. Where is Montana economy? How is it being impacted by what's going on in the world? And so I was talking to a teacher in Bainville, And she was like, oh, Nikki, agriculture is hugely dependent on international relations and international trade. Like the guy down the street just was in Taiwan because he needs to sell his crops over there. And I was like, wow, everything is so international, and global education has to move beyond social studies. It has to be in math. It has to be in science. It has to be put in agriculture classes. And so when Allie started developing this platform, I was like, Allie, we hadn't launched it yet. So this is all like in a month of time.
And are you program director still at this time?
Yes, still programs director. I was like, you know what? We're going to have an in-person conference. And she's like, of course we are. Go. Oh, gosh.
We don't tell Nikki no is what I think everyone needs to understand.
Yeah,
we're too excited and she's got a plan. We're good.
I was like, we're going to do this in Bozeman. And she's like, do we know anyone in Bozeman? And I was like, oh, we're gonna. And so we ended up starting, like Chris and I were going to Bozeman all the time. And, you know, even in 2021, we were like, all right, we're going to launch this program. It's going to be really small. Like we'll start off really small. And we ended up partnering with Gallatin College and Montana Photonics Quantum Alliance, which it was not called that at the time. And we were not a tech hub yet. It was really cool. We ended up bringing 100 kids to Bozeman.
Wow.
100 high school kids. Yeah,
from all over.
Yeah, we really kept it really small that first year.
And what was this one was called?
It was just EconoQuest conference.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, we're gonna change up the focus countries every year. So these kids, they have to go on this virtual platform in advance. They learn about all of these different industries. And then they have to use economic terminology to pitch a Montana product on the global market is the competition. And
that you've created this program.
Oh, Allie, for sure did.
But this isn't done in other states, right?
No, this is
completely. But there are other World
completely-
Affairs councils.
Yeah, I think there's 93 all in total or something like that now.
But they're not doing this.
No, they're not doing this. It's completely invented by Montana World Affairs Council. And it's this incredible program. And it's now, you know, we're probably in person 200, but there's probably like 1,200 kids that went through it.
Wow.
Middle school teachers now are using a middle school version of it. So that's expanded. And I just remember this first year, I was like, oh, you know, and it's cool. Okay, wait, I'm backing up again. Sorry. Yeah. It's a cool program because we get to work directly with the government, our state government. So Montana Department of Commerce and Montana Department of Agriculture, they're incredible to work with. Absolutely phenomenal. And I was like, I'm going to bring all these consul generals in. And I'm going to use these consul generals to educate our youth. And then they're going to be yours to then go meet with companies to help expand their international trade network. So we partner heavily with both of these departments. And they're because Montana, I think we're at this like just a little over 1 million people. You know, you can call up all of these directors and our state government, and they're like, oh, that's so cool. You want to meet for an hour? And it's like, you can't get this in these other states. Like, I encourage you, just call them up, you know, and they'll sit down with you. And they're the most remarkable people that work for these organizations. And this is what I found. It's like, you start talking like, I'm going to do this. And people all over the state were like, absolutely, we're doing this. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. And it became this huge, like, if you look online now, I think it's got like 15 partnerships
That's
now.
insane.
And all these people were like, yeah, this is a cool idea. Let's teach kids about international trade as well as teaching them about Montana industries while meeting state standards and all of these different things. And these teachers are like, wait, this is 100% free with all teacher support included. I'm like, yeah, and the conference is free.
Which is because of the work you guys do.
And I was like, and I'm going to go pretty much harass every organization that gives out money. And I'm going to get all of your transportation, your lodging, your substitute teachers, your additional meals covered as well, which really allows us to reach these rural, remote, and tribal communities that otherwise don't feel as engaged with in the state.
Yeah.
And then on top of this, I was like, you know, I don't have enough to do.
You like a problem.
Wow.
You just see so much, and I love that, like, you see it, but you know how to do it, and you are doing it. You're like, we need money. I'm going to go get it.
And I was like, you know, let's start meeting people where they're at. Because, like, at this time, I'd really only been bringing people to the University of Montana or Montana State University. And I was like, I think we need to start meeting people where they're at. Let's start bringing programming directly into the schools. And this became actually my favorite thing to do with my job. And last year, I was like, you know, I did actually a tour with my mother-in-law, who was not my mother-in-law at the time. In 2018, we went and did Northeast and then Southeast a little bit, and then came back over and just talked to schools. And we're like, hi, just getting a vibe. And we didn't do programming. We just walked into schools and tried to meet with superintendents and principals without appointments and just knocking on doors and sitting there and talking to different people. And
very grassroots effort.
Yeah. And so, there was no logic. It was just kind of let's just go meet schools and see what's out there and what it's like. And in last year, so 2024, I was like, I really want to do programming in Eastern Montana. And so I applied for a grant and I got it. And we really did, because I live in Missoula, it was kind of started central, went east, and then east went back to central Montana too. And so we ended up starting at all these different schools. The first week I took, then director Paul Green from the Montana Department of Commerce and Katie Wilcoxon, who is now our senior officer of international relations and business attraction manager, on the road. And then we did 14 schools in 1 week,
which is
a lot in Eastern Montana. And one rattlesnake was run over by me. So I feel like I've done, I've done my contribution to Eastern Montana. And it was really cool, because no one knew Paul was the director. It was just coach. So he knew every single person in all 14 schools. People were like, you are what? And it was coach. And Katie and I were like, he's famous.
You're like, we're here for this, but why?
Yeah, they were like, you are what? So it was kind of fun to see that kind of side of Paul at the time. And Katie and I and Paul, we had this skit down where we were talking to all these kids, and half the kids are like, no, Montana does not internationally trade. So this is what we got on the road show to kind of do. And the second week I went with Allie and retired ambassador Robert Loftus, who just is the most phenomenal individual. He's the former U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of Lesotho. He's retired here with his wife, Beth, who is absolutely his better half. Sorry, Bob. Beth is amazing.
Were they at the dinner?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
And Bob just lets me kidnap him, throw him in the car, and I'm like, we're going to go to all these random places.
He probably loved it.
He's like, absolutely, let's go. And we ended up starting with some new schools, but we also had gone to some of our schools that maybe have driven out to us, but we've never driven out to them. And I was like, I want to start, if these communities are going to come all the way to Missoula or Bozeman, I want to go to them as well. And we ended up, it was the most enlightening week of probably, and I had just become executive director and I was doing this.
Which congrats, because you were doing all this stuff and then transitioned into a big role.
And I was like, okay, so we ended up going to Reed Point. Reed Point's right between Bozeman and Billings. It's not that hard to get to. It's 2 minutes off the highway. And we did this whole, 7th through 12th grade program with the ambassador. And he was talking about, I think global responsibility was the topic that second week. And they were like, would you have lunch with us? And I was like, oh, food? I'm in. Say less.
Say less.
You're going to feed me? Oh, yeah, let's go. And so we ended up having lunch, and the ambassador went and had lunch with all of the students. And so the students were like, oh, I get to have lunch with an ambassador. This is so cool. And we're sitting there, Allie and I are sitting there with the teachers, and I was like, oh, this is so easy to get to. You must get people all the time that are coming here and engaging with you. And the teacher looked me dead in the eyes and goes, no, we don't matter. We're just completely forgotten about. And Allie got in the car with me, and she was like, oh, this is going to add so much more work, isn't it, to us? And I was like, we're going to go everywhere.
You're like, that statement lit a fire.
Oh, it
was
lit a
already
fire.
lit, but it just added fuel to the flame.
I was like, we're going everywhere. And she was like, excellent. And so from there, we ended up going to Joliet, and they'd come the year before, I think, to their first Academic WorldQuest program. And I ended up walking into the classroom, and I was like, good morning. And every student was like, good morning, Nikki. And I was like, oh.
I'm famous now.
I am famous. And then we ended up about to go to Lambert, and they gave us, the whole assemblies there. And our teacher, we had awarded her the teacher in Lambert that year, the 2024 Global Educator of the Year Award, which is another program we do. And she was like, you just drove all the way to Lambert. We didn't know. And I was like, oh, I know. Isn't this great? And she's like, most people don't drive all the way to Lambert. Like, this is not common. And I was like, well, I'm here. This is excellent. Let's go. Let's talk
I'm
about
here.
it. Yeah. And we ended up going and we just kept on going. And then we were in Glasgow, and in Glasgow, I got stung by a bee, and
tell that story. Yeah. And it happens.
It happens.
We're not allergic.
Allie needs 10,000 steps in a day if you know her. And she's like, okay, we got to go run around downtown 18 times.
Or do jumping jacks outside of the car.
I'm on a business call because, as Rachel, who also works for us, likes to say, and Nikki never stopped working in Geiszler. And so we're doing I'm trying to get Allie her steps in. I'm also talking. He just flies right into my arm. And this coffee shop, I just kind of walked in the coffee shop. I'm like, I'm not allergic. Got stung by a bee. And she's like, this is Nikki. And I'm like, what? And she's like,
this is Nikki. We're in Glasgow.
Yeah, we're in Glasgow.
Okay.
And she was like, she's bringing an ambassador in to talk to Amber, this teacher. And Amber was really excited for the visit. And she'd had a lot going on in her life at the time. And her husband had been really sick with cancer. And she'd been so excited. And these small communities, they all talk about it. And she was like, we got to fix you up. So all these people were like, oh yeah, we'll wait for our coffee. And it's just kind of amazing because you think Montana is this really big state, but it's not. These people know who you are, and if you show up for them, they're they support you. And it's incredible to see and witness all the time in person. And so we ended up keep going, and I was in Fraser, and the superintendent was like, you're the Quest girl. And I was like, the Quest girl? Yeah, I do have a lot of programs with the name Quest in it. And then
yes.
I'm in Winnifred, and they're like, yeah, you're the Quest girl. I know all about you. And I'm like, I am famous.
Well, and I think what they too like about you and why you stand out is because you don't come. Because we know, we were in Ecolac and that was so fun, but you come in and you're like, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
For free. I will hustle for you. You don't know them and they don't know you, but you're like, hey, I will do all this for you. And it costs you nothing and I'm happy to do it. They're like, whoa, damn.
Yeah.
And
it's just school budgets. I just listened to the state superintendent, the Missoula superintendent, and the Lolo superintendent in Missoula do a panel about school budgets. And I was like, yeah, I got to keep all these programs free.
Yeah.
You don't understand how complicated school budgets are until you listen and you learn about school budgets and how they're actually funded. And then you're like,
and where it needs to go. And
all of these obligations these schools are required to do. And it's a lot more complicated than the average person thinks it is. And so these programs really can open up the world for very small schools that don't have the budget to bring these kids places.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, so we're a staff of 2.5. Allie is our 0.5. She is a full person. I just want everyone to know that. But she only works part-time for us. And we put on 158 programs last year.
Which is, think about 365 days in a year.
Yeah. And
you're doing this across the state virtually. You're doing all of these things, which
only 30 programs were virtual.
Yeah.
So it's just we're going to go everywhere. We're going to start talking with communities and we don't want them to feel forgotten. And so that was one of the reasons why we did this again this year. I made it a priority. My board is some of the most incredible individuals. And as we continue to grow the sport statewide, they are exceptional group of people that I've never felt more supported by. Now I'm going to cry.
No,
Sorry.
I love it. I might cry too, just watching you. Cause I'm you're so energetic and we've talked a lot too, right? Of and I've seen your board because you also do other things that I want us to talk about too, of arranging dinners, speaker series, all of that. But your board's just so loves your energy and what you're doing. And so I think they just pour into it because they see you just going, energetic, hustling, doing all of this. And they're like, how do we support her?
So thank you, board. I appreciate you guys all so much. And I mean, this is a working board. We don't pull this off with just 2.5 people. These board members, I'll be like, I need you to take this one speaker, take them to a class in Helena, drive them then to Phillipsburg, and then bring them back for an evening appreciation reception. And these board members are like, absolutely.
Yeah, Candace did that for the latest one, right? Didn't she take her?
Candace, I was like, Candace Strauss, she's on our board. She's in Bozeman. And I was like, I need you to go pick up a speaker from the airport. I have another meeting. I can't get there. And she's like, absolutely.
I got you.
And then the speaker was like, I'd really like to go to the hot springs while Nikki's on the board meeting. And sorry, Candace, I'm just going to let this out. But she was like, all right, I'll do the board meeting from the hot springs with the speaker. And, it was amazing. And we just did. And this board has kept growing so much in the last year and a half statewide. And I realized a bunch of the board members had never met each other. So we ended up doing this annual, now it's going to be now annual.
Yeah.
We just did the first
another
ever.
event.
Yeah. I need more
Why
things
not?
to do. And I was like, we're going to go to Fort Benton for a board retreat. And everyone's like, great. And so we stayed at the Grand Union Hotel.
Which is stunning if no one's
Oh
been.
my
Like,
gosh.
go.
Everyone needs to go.
Beautiful.
The Grand Union Hotel.
They just need to go to Fort Benton.
Oh, yes. But you should stay at the Grand Union Hotel too. Like the owner is fabulous. She's an amazing woman. And the food is out of this world. And if you know me, food is very important to me. And I can tell you as a foodie that hotel has the most incredible food.
And it's stunning.
It's so stunning. It's right on the river, and
with history that's really fun.
It's so much history. And then I was like, okay, board, get in the car. We're going to go to Chester. And everyone's like, great, what's in Chester? And I was like, oh, the director of agriculture. She's going to open up Jillian Street. She's invited us. We're going to go explore her family farm. We're going to actually visit a working farm and learn about how agriculture is so important to our state, as well as how international relations and global education is so vital for agriculture education. And so we ended up doing that. And then she set us up at the company she had originally started with, one of her friends in Chester. And you can just picture all of these board of directors with hard hats on, learning about chickpeas and how they get packaged and sent over to 40 different countries out of Chester, Montana. And nobody thinks like what's going on in rural Montana. The coolest stuff ever is happening in rural Montana.
But they're just doing it.
Yeah.
They're just doing it and they're quiet and they're like, we're hustling and figuring it out.
And it's the most incredible thing that you're like, oh, you need to actually drive out to these communities and meet with their community members to really fully grasp and understand how cool rural Montana actually is and the coolest industries we have going on and all of these people that are making it happen. Like we talk about Montana being this really hardworking state. But until you actually witness it and you can see it, you don't actually understand. Mm-hmm. And it takes going out there and being like,
they've got things going on.
They've got it going on. And there is so much potential in rural Montana that it was so fun to take my entire board on a road trip that I get to go on, just as staff usually, and get to experience this. And which brings us back to why I'm here this week. We decided last time, we're going to keep doing this because these communities, we have to keep showing up for them. Mm-hmm. And we ended up starting on Monday. Yeah, we went to Ecolaka. And Ecolaka had attended Academic WorldQuest in 2018 or 2019. And a teacher drove these kids in a blizzard for 17 hours. And I remember looking at that teacher and these kids at the time. I was like, one day I'm going to get to Ecolaka. And they're like, yeah, sure you will. And I was like, oh, I still remember this. And I never made it. So I was like, Marcel, we got to go to
Ecolaka.
So we did. And I can't wait to go back. I can't wait to bring my husband and my kids. We're going to go do dino days.
You can go dig.
Oh, I'm going to bring back digging into my life. And if you haven't gone to the Carter County Museum, you have to. Medicine Rock State Park was phenomenal.
It was fun. But speaking of people, I'll give a little Ecolaka plug. I think like when you think of people hustling like in these smaller towns, because they have to, right? Like to get any little thing for their town, like Saber at the Carter County Museum, she's like, we've maybe met a couple of times. Anyways, like I know her husband and all of that, but she's writing grants all the time, getting that museum funding and really putting Ecolaka's on the map because of that museum.
Yes.
And I think that that's amazing and really exciting. And I want you to talk about the programming we did at the school because that was a ton of fun because I went with them. It was so fun. We literally drove to Ecolaka to do this programming for the students. We obviously got a few other things in because when in Ecolaka,
you have to experience the whole town.
It is a destination. It's 4 hours from Billings and you guys had driven over from Missoula and then we did 4 hours down and then we drove back because then you had more things going on. But what was that programming we did in Ecolaka? I just think it was really cool to see what happened.
Well, actually, this is almost like you have to do a step back. So I had never intended, when we built EconoQuest, it was just going to be a virtual program. And then I was like, oh, we're going to do it as an in-person conference. And
your team's like, yes, we are.
Yep, that sounds great. Let's do that. And then last year, Browning High School pulled out last minute. We were going to fully fund them and everything. And the teacher was devastated. And she was like, variety of reasons, we can't do it. And these kids had already done their project. And I was like, oh, okay, well, Allie and I'll just drive up and we'll judge it. We'll we'll just do the international trade game. We can do this. Like, we can take international trade game on the road. And I was like, for funsies, I'm just going to see if I write an email, if anyone else in the state would join us. And 30 people RSVP'd yes from various industries. And we're like, let's show up for Browning. Let's bring EconoQuest on the road and do a full day in Browning. And so 30 people drove collectively 8,200 miles to bring the world to Browning.
Wow.
And I mean, the governor his staff wrote letters. I had them framed. I showed up and gave them letters. We had the director of Indian Affairs, director of agriculture, deputy director of agriculture. So when you think this is government, then you also had industry. CEO of Quantum Composers, Stephen Burrell, was there. He represented Gallatin College as well as Photonics and Quantum. We had Montana Manufacturing Extension Center. Their representative drove from Sydney, Montana.
Oh, I was like, was it Patty?
No, he had driven from Sydney, Montana to come. And he was like, yeah, no worries. I'm just going to drive 7 hours, or however many it was.
It's the Montana way.
Yeah, it's the Montana way. They're like, yeah, this community needs us. Let's show up for this community. I mean, Christina Henderson from
Montana
the
High
Tech Business Alliance, she showed up and she participated and talked about a variety of tech careers. And then we had some of our board members show up and our president emeritus showed up and they talked about just current events. Like, how is Montana being impacted by what's going on in the world? So we really talked industries and we talked about international trade. I mean, Department of Commerce was there and it was amazing. And this teacher at lunch, and I should say James Easton from Montana Chamber of Commerce Foundation, he drove up from Billings and I called him. I was like, hey, James, will you drive to Browning for me? And he was like, absolutely. I also have this other program that we do. And he had to stop in Great Falls and judge all of these kids for his own programming and then continue to Browning. Mm-hmm. So that's how amazing James is. And James said I'm only allowed to talk about him 2 times in public speaking events. So this is my one and done plug on great. James.
Yeah. And we've had him on the podcast too.
Oh, yeah. And he's like, no more, Nikki. It's a 2 and done.
2 and done. Okay, yeah. James, here we go.
So, and all these people showed up and this teacher came up to a couple other people before she got to me and there's just tears running down her face. And she was like, you have no idea how much this means to us. She's like, I had no idea what we were doing today. She's like, I've never met you. I don't know who you are. And this is the most remarkable experience I've ever seen come together. I mean, we're talking about bringing government, higher education, industry, nonprofit, all coming together for a community that didn't feel like they mattered to the entire state of Montana. And we just proved it wrong. We were like, we're here.
We're coming.
We're bringing the whole world to you. You matter to Montana. Mm-hmm. And Montana is coming to show up for you.
I love that.
She was just so thankful. And I walked away from that just being like, oh my God, this is the most incredible thing that we've ever done. And then I sat down next to these 2 other teachers in a gym. And a teacher leaned over to me and she was like, you're the person who helped lead this whole thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm the executive director. And she was like, I want you to see these 3 boys. And she pointed to these boys that were participating in the international trade game at the time. And Allie was running it. And she's like, they never have once participated. They don't pay attention to class. They don't do anything outside of school. They don't contribute to school on an everyday basis. They don't engage. That should be the better word. And she's like, I have watched them all day long engage in this entire program. They have not stopped.
Wow.
They have been participating. They are laughing. And she's like, I can't thank you enough for coming to Browning to do this. And by this time I had to walk out of the whole room.
I would have been crying. I'm crying right now. God.
I'm crying, and then I got in the car and I was like, Allie, you have to drive because I'm going to now cry for the next 20 minutes. And so Allie
changed their life.
We called it a pop-up EconoQuest. And then everyone's like, so when are we going to do the next pop-up EconoQuest? And I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is a thing now. Of course it is,
You know.
And I was like, all right, fine, I'm in. It took no convincing whatsoever. I was like, all right, let's go bring EconoQuest, mini versions of EconoQuest all over.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Let's make that our Eastern Montana thing that we're going to go do this year in September. And so what we did in Ecolaka was we were only there for 2 hours. But, we started with Marcel being like, I'm from Ekalaka and this is now what I do. And this is how you can do it, even from a town like Ekalaka. So, I mean, that was incredible to bring someone from the town itself. Teachers are like, oh my God, you're amazing. And I'm like, I know she is amazing. And then we played the international trade game. And so
which was so fun to watch.
Oh, and shout out to Montana World Trade Center because they had originally given us the framework and we expanded upon it throughout the years. And so these kids, we had 13 countries that they had to represent, and then they have these resources, and they don't get all the resources. I make it a lot harder. If Allie got to do it, she'd be the nicest person ever and be like, you're starting off all with one of the resources. I'm like, no, there's 5 resources. You start off with 2, and you have to figure out how to get all 5. You can't win unless you have every resource.
Yeah, and they're like little pieces of paper. It's like metal, car, and it's like in an envelope that you just get, and you don't know what you're getting.
You don't know what you're getting. We went around
Nikki's
and we're
just like stuffing envelopes randomly.
in the car, I'm like cutting and we're crafting in the car on the go, trying to get things done, And it's so fun. There's 5 to 6 rounds depending on how much time we have. And there's all these world situations. So these kids are like, you mean the value of a product changes when something happens in the world? This is shocking information. And so the value of your resources will go up and down throughout the game. And you have to try to figure out well, what are you going to trade for? Is it going to actually be valuable in the next round? These kids start panicking
and they're in pods. They're at a table. So for those listening, it's they have their envelope. They're in a pod of 4 or 5 kids, right? And then they're having to
trade against all these different countries, and they have to figure out what's going to happen in the world that might affect what the resources have. And you have to have one of every resource with the highest amount of points to win. And so these kids get to play it and they run around, and at first they're like, oh God, we have to play a game. And then they're like, wow,
but
this
then
is
they
actually
get really into
fun.
it.
Oh, they get so competitive.
And competitive, you see them, and then then a world thing happens. I think we had polio or something happen.
There
and
was polio outbreak in Gaza, which was a real thing that happened. So we actually put in real world scenarios, and then in real life, how did this impact, the price of pharmaceuticals, which is one of the resources. So this is what the game is about. It's about bringing the real world scenarios into it and teaching kids this actually may impact you in your own community, no matter how remote and rural you are. What happens in the world actually does matter to you. So trying to, bring the world to these small towns. And so that's what we did in Ekalaka.
But then I think it's fun too. I'm just going to add to that, because I think what I noticed is so they were and I'm sure this happened to the other schools you were at too, where they're oh, this game. But then as they get into it, you start to see things happen that you're you kind of see obviously in a bigger way when you're dealing United Nations and actual trade, but you see them starting to make deals with each other.
Oh,
and you said at EconoQuest, it gets even bigger and crazier.
Yeah, there's been
embargoes
put against other countries. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not, that country's out because I had to give up all my resources to that country. And now all these other countries are starting an alliance.
And you start to see that from these kids, and it's they don't get told to do that or prompted. They're just okay, how are we going to do it? And the box that they're in is pretty open, right? There's not a lot of rules. It's go forth and do.
And I did at first allow stealing to occur because I was in real world.
Aggressive.
Oh yeah. Regret my decision sometimes. But I was you have armies for these reasons. You have to protect yourself. So this is the importance of armies and things like that. And this one kid ended up taking it a little too seriously, stole some resources, ran all the way into a bathroom. And we're in Ronan, and I had to get the principal to get this kid out of the bathroom. He came in full handcuffs. And then Allie's now we will call United Nations General Assembly. And I'm we're doing what?
What are we doing?
And we ended up having all these countries vote in the classroom about, what are the consequences of his actions. And the teacher's wow, this was so educational. And so, we've taken this on the road now. And so we did it in Ekalaka. And then the next day we went to Lodgegrass and Lame Deer, and we did more of a true pop-up EconoQuest there. We got the whole morning in Lodgegrass, went to Grow Agency for lunch. And if you've never had lunch in Grow Agency, I highly recommend you go to the trading post and eat their fried bread. Do it now. Get extra honey. And
I was sad to not get to do that. Next time.
I'll take you.
Next time. Yep.
I will happily take you to the Grow Agency for fried bread and extra honey.
Mm-hmm.
And then the afternoon we were in Lame Deer. And this was a very emotional experience for me because, prior to this, there had been some talks, Lame Deer had been on lockdown last week and there was some, you shouldn't go. Maybe you shouldn't go. Maybe it's unsafe. Conversations some other people had brought up to me and I was like, oh, I'm going. I'm not worried. I had a conversation with the teachers and they were like, no, please come, please come. And then, we showed up in Lodge Grass first and a teacher, we did the whole programming. So Allie did this business scamper is what she calls it, which is more of in line with what our middle school program for EconoQuest is. It's just a little easier to dive into than the high school version. And Jason Yeager and Jeremy Waller talked about photonics and quantum with the students. And then Allie talked about some other industries. And then they actually worked with kids too to talk about to make photonics seem a little less scary too. And
the name doesn't help it sound.
Yeah, it sounds terrible. Wait, what is this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so we split the kids from 7th to 9th, did one program. So I did international trade and talked with Katie Wilcoxon, who again is the senior officer for international relations for the state. And then Pete Sheppy from MSU, who's the head of German professor. So he talked about how higher education can be great. Here's some avenues you can get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And how important languages are when you're talking international relations and international trade. And if anyone was interested in learning more, he was happy to talk to kids about it. And they also helped contribute and participate as some of the country's leaders. And you have the head person in international trade right now on your team. You better win,
Mm-hmm.
No pressure here, people.
Yep.
And then Allie sat there and talked about careers and industries with kids. And then they had to put together projects and pitches. So that was really
cool.
fun for these kids. And a teacher came up to Allie in Lodge Grass and was like, I want you to know it's very rare an organization will come out here to Lodge Grass. And when they do, they only want to meet with the students that are the top performing students. They don't want to meet the entire school. They don't want to work with the entire school. They want to work with the best of the best. And you guys came in here and you were like, I want to work with everybody.
Which is powerful.
Let's do programming with every single student.
And you do it across the entire state of Montana.
Yeah. And Allie, she told me this in the car and she got emotional. And I got emotional and I was like, wow, we have to go everywhere again. She was like, I know. And then we ended up showing up in Lame Deer. And this is a school that was probably had a couple days last week not in session because there was gun threats,
Mm-hmm.
and we walked in and they didn't have anything set up. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll set it up real quick. No problem. And they were like, no, we didn't set things up because we didn't think you'd actually show up. And I was like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm here.
But we're here. Let's go.
And they were like, oh my God, I can't believe they were like, you are here? And I was like, yeah, I'm here. And that was emotional in of itself. And then at the end of the day, there were these 6 boys and I would have said they were in 8th grade. And they came up and they took their hands out and each one shaked my hand and said, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming. And I was in tears.
I would have been I'm glad this isn't video because I'm like, wow, just let me cry my little heart out.
And it was, I have never been so happy in my life for showing up for communities.
But you're changing. And I think Nikki, you're changing people's lives. I know you, even coming across as you were coming over Sunday, you're like, oh, we got to stop in Bozeman and see some of our students.
We have to feed these kids. They're starving college kids. Yeah. So you don't ever leave. Yeah.
But it's you have all of these students. And I know you have a joke with your husband about you've just adopted all of them, but literally you've changed their life and been such a huge influence in their life, which is amazing because of the work that you do.
And I want to tell this one more story, but we were leaving Lame Deer and because, I had to say and hug every single teacher before I left.
Yeah.
So we didn't get out before the buses did. So we got stuck behind a bus and we're sitting behind this bus and the bus driver, literally every time that bus stopped, the bus driver got out and made sure the kids crossed the street with no incidents. And there was this dad and he was so excited. His son was running with all his arms up and he's videoing his son.
Cute.
And he's got his dog next to him. And I was like, I've been that parent videoing my kid running across the entire street to get to me. And it's so anyone listening to this, I would say, put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Go the extra mile to do this because you're going to find you have more in common with people than you do differences.
And I would encourage everybody, anyone who wants to go and experience this, I will put you in my car. It might be not the world's greatest driver, but it is a fun experience.
Allie's a great driver.
Allie's a great driver. She drove this time. And go and do this and experience it and be brave enough to go the distance, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're in West, Central, or East Montana. We're all Montanans, and we have to show up for each other, and we can't be scared to show up for these communities, and because we're afraid to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Let's show up and let's be open-minded to find the similarities, because at the end of the day, like if you have a kid, you're that parent who is filming your kid so excited to cross the street to see you at the end of the day. You know, like they're just parents. And I travel quite a bit for work, and I have a 4-year-old daughter, and you know, she's a pretty remarkable individual, but the other day, it was months ago, but she was like, "You're leaving again." And I was like, "I'm so sorry." Like mom guilt, first hard stop, mom guilt. And I was like, "You don't understand what privilege is yet." But for me, privilege is being able to go to bed every single night, knowing I can provide all of these opportunities to you and your brother just because of who I am. You don't have to worry about that. That's not one of the 100,000 worries I have in my brain when I go to bed at night. And I was like, that's a privilege. And every time I leave you, I'm trying to bring these opportunities to someone else's kid who they are going to bed every single night wondering, how am I going to bring these opportunities to my own kid? And so she was like, "Okay, that makes sense. You better be home in 3 sleeps." And I was like,
3
yes.
sleeps, Mom.
Yeah, I was like, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am." And so, I mean, this is the same kid that on election day last year got in the car and was like, "Why don't I get to vote?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And she's like, "I am a United States citizen. I have a right to vote." And I'm like, "You're 3."
And at 3, she's, I mean, she's got she's got her mom's energy.
Oh God. I was like, "Hey, you think I'm somebody? Oh, this kid I'm apparently raising is going to take over the entire world. I'm just here trying to make an impact in Montana. My kid's probably going to just be like, yeah, Montana's too small. I think I'll do the entire world."
I love that for her.
And she's just amazing. And obviously my husband's a saint, because, you know, this whole week my kids have been at home sick. And I'm like, "Oh, is it safe to come home today?"
Like, am I going to get sick because I have other travel coming up? Because you're doing so many, like, really remarkable. And I think because I went with you to EcoNutrition, and I know, like, I'm from there, so I went. But I even think, like, people listening, if they're like, "Oh, I want to go with her," when they go to, like, my hometown, go. Because those kids were all tiny, hardly remember me, because I'm old enough now where they were either maybe not born or they were so little. But it's like they can see someone, and because I'm from there, like I grew up doing what they did in the summers, and it wasn't fun and lavish vacations. It was working. And I think for them to see someone, it's like, "Oh, she did it. Why can't I do it?" And I think like to have that local someone else too that maybe did go to school in those towns was just like a fun experience for me to have.
I will take anyone on the road that would like to go on the road.
Nikki's a fun road trip. I felt like sad to not go through the rest of the time.
I hope you like crafting in a car and singing very loudly. And I do not have a good singing voice, but I still own it.
I love it. It was fun. And it's been really fun to have you on to share your story and more about the Montana World Affairs Council. You guys are doing such exciting and good work. I have a couple rapid-ish fire questions that we're going to end with. So my first one for you is, and you are an avid traveler too. We didn't even get into that. Like, we'll do that part 2 next time. We'll get into that and some of the other cool stuff you're doing. But what's the most memorable place you've ever traveled to and why?
Oh man, I should say Cortona, Italy, because that's where I got married. And I've been actually twice before that. And it's a really special place now to my husband and I and my entire family. But I actually think the most memorable place was Thailand, and getting to go to Thailand. And we did this boat tour, and I was like looking at some of the conditions people live in. It was this like moment where I was like, wow, like I have to go travel even more of the entire world. And that was the food and the people and the culture. I would go back in a heartbeat. And I'm not just saying that because my board president lives half the year in Thailand.
You're not just saying that. But I think it comes back to the work you're doing, like cultural perspective and how we all really are more similar than we're not. My next question for you is, what's the key to building and managing an effective board? We talked a little bit about it because I think I've gotten to meet some of your board members, but just from your perspective, because you're an executive director, doing big things and you cover the entire state?
I think you need board members that actually believe like in your mission. When they believe in the mission and you have an executive director that believes in the mission, that's where the magic happens. And I have a board that not only believes in me, but they believe wholeheartedly in the mission of the Montana World Affairs Council. And they're all in different industries. They're all in different sectors. They're all over the state, and not all over the state. I'm still looking for an Eastern Montana board member.
Gotcha.
And and so like there's this collaboration and inspiration, and their biggest concern always is, are you going to burn out? And it's nice when you are like, oh, I'll tell an example. So we're in Glendive, and I didn't realize I had to pay the domain fee for our website and our emails, and complete shutdown. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize people managing the website don't pay this. It's on a 2-year thing.
Yeah, this just happened this week. Yeah.
This happened this week. And I sent a whole thing out to the board. I'm like, oh my God, the board is going to be so mad at me. They're going to be so upset. Like, I can't access my emails, nothing. And 2 of the board members reply back, and they're like, oh, maybe you should go on vacation. Like, oh, this seems like a really good time. This is good for you. You should disconnect. And I'm like, no, we should be panicking. And they're all like, nah, this is fine. This is good. Like, you're going to figure it out. We all know you're going to figure it out. But it's this, they have a faith in me as a leader and as a person that's leading this mission, that it's incredible to have and to foster that. And, I would encourage, we don't do like an application process. It's people that come up to us and are like, we want to join the board because we believe in the mission. So that's how we go about in recruiting. It's people in these communities, they come forward and they're like, wow,
love what
we
you're doing.
have to be a part of this energy. We are a part of Montana. We want to build bridges in Montana and bring opportunities to students, bring resources to teachers. And this is the place where we're going to do it. And like, they all want to work. They all contribute. I talk to every single board member almost once a week, if not every day, or 10 times a day, and like we have a group chat. So like if a board member finds another board member, they're sending selfies. I got some last night. And, it's like,
those are fun because they see each other and they're across the state.
They're across the state and they're so excited to be a part of this. So that's what I would encourage is if you're listening to this, you're like, how do I do an effective board? Find a board that believes in you and believes in your mission and is ready to get to work.
I love that. I think that's really good. My last question for you is, what opportunities do you see ahead for Montana's growth and success?
Oh, man. Montana is this exceptional state. I mean, we have so much potential, and my personal, like, where am I going to take this is I want to walk into a rural community and them to be like, oh, we feel so included. Because I think that is where we're going to strengthen our state and where we're going to really, truly bring opportunities so Montana kids can stay in Montana and they'll know of the opportunities that lie ahead of them. Teachers are going to be like, wow, we are part of the conversation. And we feel like we can do this. And communities are like, Montana is the best place to be. Like, West loves East and East loves West. And Central's like, you know what? Every side is amazing. And that is when we can build those bridges, the potential of Montana is going to be unstoppable. Like, we are people that don't know how to say no. We go the extra mile, and I see it every single day. Like, I keep thinking, wow, I am asking too much of Montana. And people are still like, oh, you want to go drive 8 hours to some place? Let's go. Let's do it. Let's bring the opportunities. Mm-hmm. Let's go drive around businesses. And I get the opportunities to like meet with some of these directors. And like, shout out to Director Bertolio and Director Street and Director Cool. Like, it's so amazing. And being the youngest female executive director out of any World Affairs Council in the entire country, having these strong women in leadership roles is the most inspirational thing. So a shout out to them for continuing to text with me all the time and uplifting me and providing me support.
Shout out to you, because think of like you though. I mean, to all of the people that are, because you're very young, but like, all of us that are younger than you.
Yeah. I mean,
because it's like, how do we be like her?
I guess you'd be really loud and you go the distance.
Just passionate.
And bring the energy. And I think people think if you're your authentic self, they're going to listen and they're going to want to be a part of what you're doing. And Montana's potential, it's unstoppable. And I truly believe that.
Well, Nikki, it's been fun. I know you got to get on the road, but where can people get connected with the Montana World Affairs Council and find you?
You just go on our website,
That's up
Montana
and it's
World
good.
Affairs. Yeah, it's now up, everyone. I figured this out, but montanaworldaffairs.org. You can find all of our upcoming events, sign up for our newsletters. We'll probably be in a town near you eventually throughout the year. And if you are from a small community and you're like, man, I really want this crazy person to visit, I'm on my way. Just let her know. My cell phone and my email is on the website. I will call you back, text you back, email you back immediately, and we'll plan. We'll get out there.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Nikki. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Vault. Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway or Instagram at TheVault_201. Or check us out on our website, thevault@201.com, where you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter. See you next time.